Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another issue of Mike Nerheim Live. Tonight we're talking about the concept of restorative justice and how that works globally and more locally, how we're doing it here in Lake County. So I'm excited to have a lot of great friends and panelists with me tonight to talk about this concept, which is certainly an important one and kind of the new way that we're trying to handle cases here, not just in Lake County, but we're starting to see this around the country. So first we have Donna Barnett, who is a volunteer on our Alternative Prosecutions program. She's, as you can see, she is on the road and kind enough to join us, and she's going to talk about her experiences with the Citizens Panel and the Alternative Prosecutions program. We also have Julio Argueta, who is a criminal defense attorney in Waukegan, practicing here in Lake County, that has been a great partner to the office, a former assistant state's attorney, but has had several of his clients that he has sent through some of our programs, and he's here to tell his story. We have Pastor Rick Harris, who is a member of our community and very active in prevention work, and a pastor here in Lake County and a community leader, among other things. So, Pastor Harris, welcome. And last but definitely not least, we have the Honorable Judge Margaret Mullen, retired, who is here to talk about the concept of restorative justice and those practices in our legal system. So Judge Mullen, welcome. It's great to see you.
Great to see you and to be on this distinguished panel.
Well, let's get right into the discussion. I've talked about restorative justice. It's a concept that we hear a lot about, but what is it?
Restorative justice really thinks about justice a little bit differently. And it doesn't just focus on the crime and the law breaking. It focuses or really widens that view to think about the victim, of course, and the harm's been brought to the victim, but there's also a harm to society. And if that can be addressed and the affected community members can be brought into the fold to make community response, that's part of it. And there's a focus on what is it that the defendant needs to do to make amends for what he or she has done, but also what do they need to be successful in reintegrating into the community. So it's kind of a little bit different. I mean, the main, what I think of as the traditional justice system does many things great, and there's certainly a focus on law breaking and the recordation of that, and a sentence that is just is certainly a concern, but restorative justice is really thinking larger. And I think that, some of the programs that we have in Lake County have a lot of great restorative justice features in them, and especially drug court, Mike, which, your office does such a great job at. It's really, to me, drug court, veterans court, mental health court embody a lot of these restorative practices. But, restorative justice it's not just nationwide, Mike, it's a global movement.
Sure.
And I'm glad that Lake County is part of it.
Well, I feel like our system here in the United States has kind of caught on a little late to these concepts. But, what I like about the whole concept is it's really forward thinking and really looking at long-term solutions and not just the individual crime and the individual defendant, which I think is the way the criminal justice system historically treated cases. And ironically, people that criticize this concept, I think if they don't know about it, characterize it as this quote unquote soft on crime approach. But in reality, this actually allows victims of crime to have a say much more in the process than traditionally, which is those of us that work with victims of crime, and I know everybody on this panel has, one of the most frustrating aspects of the criminal justice system from the victim's perspective is they feel like they're not heard. They feel like they never actually have a voice. And these practices really give victims the opportunity to have that voice and to really be heard, not just by us or the judge, but actually in appropriate circumstances by the defendant himself or herself. And that can be very powerful for both the victim and the offender. And, you know, certainly some of the programs we have in Lake County, as you referenced, drug court, mental health court, veterans court, that all fall under the umbrella of our TIM court, or therapeutic intensive monitoring. Those are wonderful programs that are really designed to help people that get kind of wrapped up in the criminal justice system because of any number of issues, and they're all sort of self-explanatory based on the nature of those courts. But whether it's an addiction, a mental illness, a combination of both, you know, with veterans court, for example, we have a lot of veterans in our community that, because of their service to us, struggle with post-traumatic stress or substance abuse issues. And that's what I really love about those programs. It's about not treating these people like quote unquote criminals, but it's about getting them back on their feet and getting them back out there. And they're wonderful programs. I know our drug court, as you know, was one of the first around, and certainly one of the first actually in Illinois to be a high risk, high needs diversion, where you know, all the people that come through our drug court have extensive criminal history, extensive addiction issues, and every one of them, but for drug court, would have otherwise gone to the Department of Corrections. And we have plenty of stories of people that have gone a different path because of drug court, that have gone on to college, that have you know, had very successful careers and successful lives because of that opportunity. And you know, in addition to those programs, of course, we have the new STOP program, which is a diversion program that is kind of like drug court, but it's for first-time offenders or people with lower criminal histories, but still with significant addiction issues. Of course, we have the Alternative Prosecution program, which we'll hear about more in just a minute, but that's really designed to help give people that second chance for those kind of first-time, low-level, more nonviolent offenses, to allow people the opportunity to avoid a conviction, but still be accountable for their actions. You know, we have, I guess, the most pure form of this concept is our victim offender mediation program out in juvenile, where we employ that peace circle model, where you have the victim and the offender and a mediator actually participating, and that can be a very powerful experience. And what we found interestingly with those cases is kind of getting back to the concept of victims not feeling heard. A lot of feedback we get from victims that participate in that is, once they've had a chance to actually be heard and to sort of say their piece, they're really not looking for much more from the criminal justice system. And it also has a very powerful effect on the offenders.
Mike,
so
that was one of the things I wanted to say here, and I think that's such a great program. But one of the things I've learned is that globally, studies have shown that not only does the victim and people involved with the victim, their friends, family, support system, and the community feel a higher satisfaction with the justice system, but I think it's very interesting that the defendants, or offenders, I think it's probably a better word, are more likely to pay restitution after they've met with the victim. It is very powerful for both the victim and the offender.
Right. And ultimately society benefits, right? Because the victim's made whole, society's made whole, and the offender is in a better position to, you know, not recidivate and to become more of a productive member of society. So they're great concepts. And then even before that, though, one of the new programs we created a couple years ago is one that we're really proud of, and it's the A Way Out program, because that recognizes that there's so many people that end up in the criminal justice system because of either an addiction or a mental illness or both, that, you know, certainly our programming that's in place for people once they've gotten arrested is wonderful. But ideally, if we can help people before they get arrested, that's the most ideal scenario. And that's one of the reasons why we created the A Way Out, recognizing that there's a lot of people struggling with addiction that want help, and they just don't know how to access resources. And we created that program so people could simply just walk into a police station and say, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to live this way. Help me out. And the police are doing it. The last time I checked, we were closing in on 800 people in Lake County that have come in and gotten help because of that program, with no arrest, The police will drive them to treatment if necessary, but there's no arrest made. And that's another very pure form of this concept, because you're stopping penetration into the criminal justice system altogether, and you're getting people that help, which is, like I said, I think we all agree that's the best case scenario.
And it's revolutionary, I think, Mike. I love that program because it involves the police officers, not in just the negative part of it, the arrest and uncovering wrongdoing, but in the solution and the rehabilitation of the offenders. So tough.
Yeah. Well, let's shift over. Donna, I want to make sure we get to you before we lose you. I know you're traveling and kind enough to join us this evening while you're out of state. One of the programs we talked about is the Alternative Prosecution Program, and that's a diversion program that the whole idea was to make sure that we're allowing people that got involved in the criminal justice system, even with felony offenses, the opportunity to avoid a conviction. Certainly drug court, as we talked about, is a prison diversion program where people are avoiding going to prison, but prison sentences are finite, and a conviction oftentimes can be a lifetime sentence. And so many people have gone through issues when they were perhaps young, made poor choices, got that felony conviction on their record that then stays there for the rest of their life, and makes it hard for them to get meaningful employment and all of those other things. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to create this diversion program, which balances. It does require people to be accountable, but also if they are accountable and if they remain arrest free, and if there's restitution, they pay the restitution back, and if they stay out of trouble and all those things, and they address whatever the issue is that brought them to the system, if they do all those things, we dismiss the case and they're able to move on with a clean record. And part of our program, as you know, involves a citizens panel, because again, we want to make sure part of the concept of balanced and restorative justice involves the community, and people are not only answering to the victim, but also to the community as a whole. And I think that's a very important element in this, and you actually you do it. So talk about your experience on the citizens panel.
Well, I've had the privilege of being a part of this program since its inception. So I've seen how it's grown, and we've learned a lot along the way. And as you stated with your Way Out program, these people can come in for help without any questions asked. And sometimes in the Alternative Prosecution Program, it's a blessing that they've come to us because it is a second chance. But at the same time, decisions and choices are being made for them because they have to follow a certain criteria. And these decisions and choices are better than the choices they have been making for themselves, or they've had the opportunity to make on their own. So that's what I like about the program. They may have to get drug and alcohol counseling. They may have to get a GED or continue schooling. They may have to make restitution and even an apology letter to the victim, but they're being accountable for their actions. And these are positive choices, even public service, where we may give them 50 to 100 hours of public service, but giving back is good for them as well, and making them whole. And many of the clients who come to us, it's such a diverse background. We get a lot of young kids, maybe they're on their way to Lollapalooza and they've gotten stopped for drugs, and now they have a felony on their record and they want to go to med school or they want to become a nurse, and this is going to hold them back. This kind of program offers them the opportunity to get this off their record and continue on a path that is good for them, and they can be a productive being in society. So, and normally maybe this would hold them back, and maybe they would continue the bad choices or go down a different path.
Can you kind of walk people through the process in your involvement? How does the citizens panel get involved? What is your role? What kind of questions do you ask? And kind of talk to people about that.
Typically, an offender is going to court and they are referred to us by a judge, a public defender, their attorney, or even the state's attorney's office, they're referred to us, then at that point in time, there's an intake interview at your office with an administrator. If they meet the requirements, a date is set to meet before us, which is a citizens panel. It's typically between 6 and 8 people. We are all from different backgrounds. We bring something different to the table. We've even had a couple of graduates and success stories from the program join our panel, which is actually really refreshing because they bring a fresh perspective to the interview process. Because they've been through the program, they can relate to these people on a different level, and they may ask different questions than we may ask just because they've been through some of the same issues. So if they come before our panel, they come in, they sit down, usually one of the ADAs is with them. They sit down, they're introduced to us. We have the opportunity to interview and ask questions, as many as we want. Most typically any kind of questions. We may start off with, we want them to tell us their story. What brought them there? And then from there, we may ask them about their livelihood. What do they do for work? What do they do in their spare time? Are they remorseful? Most, you get a good feeling from these people. A lot of them will come in very emotional, a little shaky. We have Kleenex for them. Some will cry. We've had a couple that don't have any emotion at all. And you kind of think twice because they're a little cocky. Most people have a story to tell. And you have to listen, read between the lines for sure. And most of them, I have to say, want the help, are appreciative of this opportunity. And that's one thing we do say to them. Most often I will say this, do you know how lucky you are to have this opportunity for a second chance? Not everybody gets this. And we hope they appreciate it. We always wish them luck when they leave. The questions we ask tell a story. We then have a criteria on paper that we fill out. And we check mark different programs that we think would benefit them. Behavior modification program, most often for everybody. I believe it's a 4-hour course at Lake County College. A lot of times writing a letter of apology, restitution. Like we said, we may require them to enroll in some college courses. Again, it forces them to make some good choices that they may not make on their own.
No, it's wonderful. And I think that panel approach to this is so important. And there are a lot of different types of diversion programs, but they don't all have, in fact, most don't have a community panel aspect like we do. And when we built this program, the Alternative Prosecution Program, I kind of modeled a lot of it after teen court, which is another restorative justice model. And
Yes.
I've served as a volunteer judge for many years on teen court, and that is another way that youth offenders are diverted from the juvenile justice system, but they have to come in front of a quote unquote jury of their peers, which are other youths that sit there and they will question that person, and they have to answer to their peers for their conduct. And they're also given an opportunity to avoid really any involvement in the system. But I think it's very powerful because I've seen that. And I think it's one thing for a teenager to be lectured by an adult or even a judge, but it's a whole nother thing for them to have to answer to a group of their own peers. And that's why I love incorporating this community panel as part of our program. And it wouldn't work if it weren't for volunteers like you that
thank you.
take up a lot of your time to do that. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I love being a part of it. I think it is very powerful. And I think when these people come in, they realize that their future is literally in the hands of these 6 or 7 people and your office. So they take it very seriously and they realize it's quite an opportunity for them.
You brought up another really good point too about how the cases come to us. And I'm glad you reminded me of that, because that's actually another reason why I built the program. Because, frankly, historically, if somebody committed a sort of a low-level nonviolent crime and they had an attorney that, had people that they knew in the prosecutor's office, they could go and they could say, hey, you know, this is a good kid, he just made a mistake. What if he goes and gets some treatment and stays out of trouble? And if we do that, we dismiss the case in a year. And oftentimes those could get worked out, because if you had an attorney that was able to, you know, kind of make that case. But, you know, it's pretty obvious that that's not fair. I mean, that opportunity shouldn't depend on what type of an attorney you have or the type of resources you have. And that's why the program was built the way it is, that anybody can come to the alternative prosecution program, frankly, whether you have an attorney or not. We have a fair amount of referrals that come from family members. We have attorneys like Julio that send a lot of their clients to us. Public defenders send clients to us, and as you know, but the public may be surprised, there's a fair amount of our referrals that come from the arresting police officer that will call in and say, yes, you know, we just arrested this person, they did commit this crime, but we think they'd be a great candidate for your diversion program. And I think that's wonderful, because, you know, these opportunities should be and are here in Lake County, but they should be available to everybody, regardless of, you know, what their zip code is or what their level of resources are.
And no matter where they're coming from, the fact that they have some skin in the game gives them control of their destiny for this year, and hopefully, you know, beyond that also for their future. And that's what I like about it. They are held accountable. And if they don't adhere to the criteria and the guidelines, they can very likely be booted out of the program.
Yep.
There's somebody right behind them waiting to get in.
Yep. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for all the time that you've devoted to this, for your time this evening. Again, as I said, I know you're making yourself available as you're traveling, and I really appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Pastor Harris, we're going to shift over to you to get kind of the perspective as a community leader and somebody that's very active in our community here in Lake County. I know you're aware of balanced and restorative justice, these concepts. You've trained on this, you teach on this, but from your perspective, why is this important to our community?
Well, as I look at it as it relates to how it has helped our community and how it's important, as perfect as our Constitution is, it has amendments because it also has shortcomings. Even though we are a country of laws, we realize that the criminal justice system also has flaws which result in disparities and adverse impact for the most vulnerable within our community. I believe that restorative justice is a way to help level the scales of justice and bring much needed equity to the criminal justice system by offering meaningful alternatives to incarceration. So restorative justice has helped by focusing on rehabilitation versus incarceration, still holding offenders accountable while providing victims with a sense of say, a sense of control and empowerment. And additionally, community-wise, it has reduced the rate of recidivism while allowing offenders to truly feel that they have paid their debt to society. So that's how I see it has helped our community.
Now, as a pastor and somebody that, you know, you work with a lot of people that have experienced trauma, you know, whether they've had trauma as having gone through the criminal justice system, maybe they've been victimized, but I know through your work, you work with a lot of people that have experienced trauma. And, you know, from your experience, how does this concept play into that in terms of why is that important and how is that helpful for those people?
Excellent question. Some of the common emotions that felt by those impacted by trauma or crime are those of hopelessness, helplessness, personal violation, and questions even as to, well, why them? Why me? And all of these emotions I found in my years of doing this work as clergy, all of these emotions make it extremely difficult for them to move forward. Restorative justice, I believe, helps victims, allows victims a chance to be heard, have a say in the process. And it's strange how important that is, but it is very important to have a say in the process, potential dialogue with the offender, and then an ability to and an opportunity to heal. And I find that it's a two-step process, in that it's one thing to get over a trauma or an offense or a crime. It's another thing to get past it. And I think the restorative justice and its programs help them not only get over, but move past and lead a productive life.
I want to go back to that access issue and kind of the leveling the playing field that you brought up, because that's important. And that has huge ramifications in terms of the public's trust of the criminal justice system as a whole. And I know I'm not naive. I know there's a perception out there and there's reality in terms of the unfairness of our system, and in particular, our entire criminal justice system as a nation, and how it has historically and in some places continues to favor the wealthy and people of privilege. And these programs aren't always available to everybody, or even if they are, I know there's a perception that they're not. So talk about that in your experience with that, and maybe thoughts you have on how it could be done better and more effectively.
Well, as I think most important as clergy, I believe there's an opportunity to better communicate and educate the community on the whole concept of restorative justice. Many within the community who have not been through the criminal justice system are not aware of the programs, the various programs, or the processes. And in a time where the entire criminal justice system is being questioned relative to implicit bias, I believe that it's imperative to share as much information as possible regarding restorative justice and its social benefits. I think two words we're finding today in what we're experiencing as the greatest civil rights movement of our time are the two words of equality and equity. But when you ask people to unpack those, you get a million different definitions as it relates to them. But as I think about restorative justice, all the programs you've talked about, drug court, the victim offender programs, et cetera, you can't really have the conversation about equality until you first address equity. And equality is assuming that we're all starting from the same place, right? That we all have the same resources, we all have equal access, things of that nature. But we don't. Equity bears witness that you have to meet people where they are when things are like I talked about our justice system, our Constitution, things of that nature. Amendments and so forth are in place, hopefully to bring about those things to already a great system. But you gave it in your example. If I didn't have a lawyer, if I didn't have means or whatever, I might end up in Joliet somewhere. Whereas, someone who committed the same crime or same offense, then they're off on the streets going to their job or going to college or something of that nature. So Mike, growing up in this area, understanding the inequities that people are facing in this community, I think that had to play an important part with you pushing forth all of these programs and making them accessible to those who otherwise would not have them. Mike, there's a ton of people that really had committed a crime, but they're not necessarily a criminal. We know that. And right. Without programs like this that bring about true equity, those people would not have a chance. So
I think we've all seen that through our careers, and whether it's Judge Mullen, Julio, Donna, you, myself, all of us know that the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of people that come through the criminal justice system are not evil people. They're not bad people. These are people that struggle with a lot of issues or may not have had, the childhood that I was lucky enough to have, or may have had adverse childhood experiences or what have you. But there's a lot of reasons that drive them into the system, but they're not evil, bad people. And I think we've all seen that, and there's opportunity there to help people and really help our community in the long run. And you brought up a point that is important. We can have all these great programs, but if people don't know about them, what's the point? And so one of the things that we've tried to do here in Lake County is to make sure that all the lawyers know that these programs exist, so they can then tell their clients. Because as prosecutors, we're not allowed to talk to the people that we prosecute. So we have to go through their attorneys. So one of the things that we did a few years ago was every defendant that we prosecute, everybody gets the discovery, which is the police reports and all that, that's given to their attorney. And on the face sheet of that, we have a document that basically says, you know, just so you know, we've got drug court, veterans court, mental health court, alternative prosecution program. You know, we kind of list all these different programs and say, you know, here's what they all are. Your client may or may not qualify, but talk to your client about all these opportunities. And if you're interested, let us know. And we've seen greater participation because not all the attorneys even know that these programs exist or how they operate. And it's important that we get the word out.
And again, I find that those who have been through the criminal justice system, they know about all of it. It seems like they know about all of the programs. They educate us as clergy most times, but the audience of folks who haven't, it would just be good for them to know from a perception perspective as they look at, hey, there are some efforts being taken to bring about equity and equality as it relates to the criminal justice system. So even though they have no intention, and God forbid that they do go through the process, at least they know that some work is being done, and the system is not as flawed as we may think it is.
Well, I appreciate your help, and I know again in your role as a pastor and a community leader, you've done a lot to spread the word throughout the community about the availability of some of these programs, and I thank you for that. I know you've brought several people into each of these programs, so thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike, and really, we serve a God of second chances. We do. We all have deserved. We didn't deserve a program like this, and my fellow clerics look at a program like this as possibly giving a second chance to someone who otherwise would not have had one. It also gives the victims a chance as they sit across from someone, right? To now, you know, they have to mete out grace and mercy, and hopefully better understand that everyone who commits a crime is not in fact necessarily a criminal. So it's from my perspective, from a cleric's perspective, it's just an ideal program, and we can't do enough of it in this county. So I commend all of you who are involved with it, and it is something that we need.
Thank you, sir. Julio, I want to shift over to you as a practitioner here in Lake County. And I know you have also sent a lot of your clients to drug court, to the alternative prosecution program. You know, I want to hear your perspective there, but just, you know, I was a defense attorney for a while too. And I remember when drug court first started, it was sort of new in Lake County, and I was a defense attorney, and I had a lot of clients that struggled with addiction. Absolutely. And I would try to encourage them to take this opportunity that is drug court as an alternative to going to the Department of Corrections. And sadly, and you appreciate this, but I think a lot of people might find this counterintuitive, but I had a lot of my clients that would, frankly, they would rather go to prison than go to drug court. And, you know, I'd say, hey, look, you've got this great opportunity for drug court, or you could go to prison for a couple of years. And there were some people that would say, look, let me just go to prison, get my time over with. I don't want people looking over my shoulder. Drug court's hard. I don't want people in my business, because we all know, all of us that have worked with people that struggle with addiction know that it's hard to help people that don't want help or that don't know that they need help at that point. And I know it's a challenge because I struggled with trying to encourage and motivate my clients to take what they perceived as the harder of two options, but obviously much better for them in the long term. And, you know, again, all of us have had the opportunity to go to a drug court graduation or a veterans court graduation or a mental health court graduation, and they're really amazing experiences. And anybody in the community that is interested, I can't recommend enough. Certainly, again, once court gets open live again, but they are done on Zoom, but to watch one of those graduations or go and attend one, because they're very powerful experiences. And the graduate talks, and to a person, every one of them tells the story how they didn't initially want to do drug court. They kind of went into it thinking, well, I'll just do this to avoid prison, but I really wasn't into it. And then they will say it's the hardest thing they've ever done. But every one of them always ends with, but I'm really glad I did it. I'm really glad I stuck it out. And here I am today. And I think that's why that's so powerful. But to kind of back up and get kind of back to the beginning of the process, it can be a challenge sometimes to encourage clients to take these opportunities. Have you seen that in your practice?
Yeah, and Mike, we talk about your days as a defense attorney, and you remember when we were at the state's attorney's office together in the early 2000s, we didn't have these programs really available to us where we could offer this to defense attorneys and to the defendants. And yeah, when I tell my clients when they come into my office with a case, drug case or nonviolent felony or so forth, there's going to be, your case has just started. There'll be a middle to it, and then there'll be an end, but your life's going to continue. And we want to make sure that you're not back here. We want to make sure that you're not back here paying me again to represent you on another case. That's the way I approach it with my clients. And, the thing about restorative justice programs, like I said, a lot of my clients have gone through this process, and it's, I wouldn't be doing my job. I wouldn't be diligent if I don't look into this. And, the studies have shown, and I tell this to my clients, how people who have gone through these programs are less likely to reoffend. And there is a victim satisfaction to this. As defense attorneys, our duty is to advocate for our clients for the best possible outcome within the law and within the facts of the case. And as a prosecutor, the duty is to seek justice, not merely to convict. And restorative justice, I think, meets both of those ends quite nicely. And it is not supposed to be easy. It's not a matter like you get into a drug court program, you get into an alternative prosecution program, mental health court program. It's not supposed to be easy. There's supposed to be an accountability factor. And I like that about it because it's not the easy road. Sometimes it's very much the harder road. But when you're done and you have completed all this, the sense of accomplishment, like you said, at these graduations, when people speak at these graduations and they're done with this and they're able to put this part of their life behind them, boy, is it nice. It's you see that there's a brotherhood and a sisterhood that is built up, and these people, how they support each other. There's Erica right there. I see her there.
Hello.
Hi, Erica. Erica, just mute yourself for 1 second. Okay, thank you, Erica. I think as a defense, it's not a matter of so much taking advantage of these programs. I want to see my clients get better. The substance abuse issue is a big issue with me. I'm also in the advisory board for the Lawyers Assistance Program. And, these are things that I think the old school way of doing things, whether it was mental health issues or drug and or alcohol issues, you don't talk about it. You don't talk about it at the dinner table. You don't talk about it. You just kind of, put it aside. And the way I think the court systems used to deal with it is just sentence people to probation or lock them up. We know, like you said, Mike, you touched upon this, the majority of these people, but for these mental health issues, but for these drug issues, but for their upbringing, things that they have suffered as kids, they wouldn't be in the position where they are. So these restorative justice programs are just such a wonderful opportunity. And, I will always push them to my clients. And, Erica just joined us right now, and she's a graduate of the Alternative Prosecution Program. She had a non-violent felony, and boy, I am so proud of her. Here's someone who has aspirations to do things in life, and because of an error in judgment, because of maybe hanging around with the wrong people, she got in a little trouble. But there was a process. She qualified for it, and she was accountable. That's the thing. Okay, she would check in on her case. That's the thing I find about all these people that are involved in these programs, whether it's the drug court or the alternative prosecution program. They're the best clients. They're always checking in on their case, seeing what's going on. When's my next court date? What else do I have to do? Is there anything else I need to do? That's great. Like I said, because of the accountability factor, because of the fact that they can move on with their lives and do great things. And this is not going to dissuade an employer from hiring them. It's not going to dissuade a college from accepting them. It's a wonderful opportunity for them.
Well, Julio, you've been amazing at just a great partner. And I know you've brought a lot of your clients through these programs and really, ultimately it's their decision, right? All you can do as an attorney is
that's all.
Present the options to your client, and represent them the best you can, try to get the best outcome for them as possible. But ultimately, I mean, the one choice that the clients get to make all the time is how to resolve the case, whether they want to go to trial or not. And if there's going to be a disposition, whether they're going to agree to that. And all you can do is advise them and recommend different things, but ultimately it's up to the client to have the courage to kind of take these cases on and try to take on these opportunities and better themselves. They don't, you know, not everybody does, but you've been very successful at encouraging your clients to take up these opportunities, which ultimately benefits them. So thank you for that. And as you said, we have Erica that has been kind enough to join us. So I want to go to her because Erica is actually on a break from work right now and was kind enough to come on. And we definitely, I don't want to take up too much of your time, Erica, but I do appreciate you coming on because you know, for the last 40 minutes or so, we've been having this great discussion about this whole concept of restorative justice and these practices that are all great when you talk about them in theory, but people very rarely get to actually see the result of these opportunities. And you are a successful result of the alternative prosecution program. So talk to us about your experience and you know, anything you'd like to share about your experience coming through this program.
Okay. Hi, my name is Erica. I was part of the alternative prosecution program. This program impacted me and changed my life in so many ways. It's a great program. It changed me and I learned so much from it. I learned so much. I say this because this program gave me the chance to make things right and turn my life around. They allowed me to prove that I can become a better person, right, even after my life was at its worst. My past mistakes don't define me, and basically, it all started. I did a crime, like a felony, um, an attempted burglary. It all started with I started hanging out with the wrong group of people, friends back then. They were car hopping and everything, and I myself was surrounded with them, and by being with them, it impacted me, and I got in trouble. My burglary that I was accused of was that I opened a car that wasn't mine. Attempted to steal, but at that moment when that situation happened, I was there. I opened the door, but you know, I told myself, "What am I doing? Like, this is not me. This is not right." So I instantly closed the door, and I left. And because of me opening that door that wasn't my car, my vehicle, I got charged with this felony. And because of this whole situation that happened, I went to court and everything, and I found Julio, my lawyer, for this case. And from there on, I met Lisa Connolly, and she talked to me towards this program, and she got me in this program. At first, I didn't know if I was going to be accepted or not, but it turned out in the end that I was able to. And in the end, I had court, and I had to follow everything. At that point back then, I was on my own. I didn't have my parents' support because they said, you got yourself into this problem, then you have to find yourself to be able to solve your own problems. So I had to, so I had to change that. I had to work, pay my debts, and just make a change for myself. And, you know, I think this program is really great because I didn't want this to define me in my future, because I have a future for myself. I want to keep studying, keep working, and become a better person, and, you know, just move on with life and leave my past behind.
Well, you know what? I can't applaud you enough for what you've done, because first of all, you you had to learn about the program, which you
Yeah.
did, but then you had to agree to take part in it. And part of it was taking accountability and agreeing to do all of those things, really with the idea of trying to better yourself. But you did all the work, and I got regular updates from Lisa about you as you went through this program, and you know, she is very proud of you. I know you recently graduated successfully from the program. We're all proud of you. You know, you are exactly why these programs were built. Somebody that made a poor choice, but that doesn't mean you need to have a burglary conviction on your record forever, because that conviction, as you know, that would prohibit you from doing a lot of things. And you know, now you don't have that. You've got a clean record, and you've got the opportunity to now go on and do whatever you want, which is the perfect scenario. And I think it's fitting that you're talking to us on a break from work, because you're working, you're employed, and that's great. It's wonderful. And I just can't congratulate you. I know everybody on the panel. I know you jumped on a little late, but we have a retired judge here on the panel. We've got a local pastor here who's very involved in the community. You know Donna from the citizens panel. So there's a lot of great people here that are really proud of you and want you to be successful. But you did the hard work.
She did. It's not a matter, these alternative prosecution programs are not a matter of just being good, paying a fine, and that's it, and making a donation. There was obviously fines, there was restitution. She had to provide proof of full-time employment, maintaining her education, public service hours. She did all of it. So that's why, like I said, the accountability factor is so good. And that's why it's so much more fulfilling to see her on this end now and put this behind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Erica, and thanks for taking. I know breaks from work are precious time, so I hate to take you away from that, but I appreciate that, and we'll let you. You're welcome to stay on, but if you've got to get back to work, we definitely understand and just appreciate all you've done, and wish you nothing but the best. You know, there's a lot of people pulling for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Great job, Erica. God bless you and keep up the good work. Excellent.
Thank you very much. God bless all of you.
Thank
We're
you.
proud of you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for taking your time. Go back to lunch.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, Judge Mullen, if we could kind of go back to you. I know we started talking about the concept of balanced and restorative justice. One of the panelists that unfortunately had something come up at the last minute and couldn't be here is retired Judge Sheila Murphy from Cook County, who is really I think a pioneer when it comes to this whole concept, certainly here in the area, but nationally and all over. So it's too bad she couldn't be here, but you know, and I think she would have appreciated this discussion and hearing from Erica, certainly. And I know people would have benefited a lot from what she had to say. But one of the things I was going to ask her, and I'm going to ask you since she's not available, but where do we go from here? So, you know, we've talked about these concepts. We've talked about what's going on here in Lake County and some of the things that we're seeing. But, you know, where do we go from here? What's the future of this, in your opinion? How can we improve? How can we do more? What other programs need to be created? What do you see as the future?
Well, okay, if I wasn't to say it, but you know, I personally think I'd love to see a community court like they have in Cook County. First off, I'm a retired judge, so I'm really just speaking as a citizen. I'm sure the judges in the courthouse are like, what? But a community courthouse where we continue, and I'm so proud of all of these programs. And may I say that Judge Sheila Murphy from Cook County came up and spoke at a restorative justice seminar, College of Lake County, and Mike was on the panel with other people. And when she heard about the things we were doing in Lake County, she was extremely impressed, which I have to say brought a point of personal pride to me. But in Cook County, they have a community court where low-level offenders, it's set in the community, they meet with community members, and they really integrate all of the facets of restorative justice, which is that affected community response. So if there's a, property damage over felony down in a neighborhood, then that is where that affected community is going to meet with supporters of the offender, supporters of an individual victim, if there is one, and come up with a consensus response that will restore the victim, it'll restore the community. But, and this is the part we don't want to forget, we have to restore the defendant too, because some of the crimes, they're hurting themselves as much as anyone else. And Mike, you made a good point that is, in my experience, 90% of what I saw in the criminal courtrooms that I sat in were substance abuse, mental health issues, and then there's that other, which most of which, and you touched on it, is, you said upbringing, but I see it as trauma. There's a lot of people, it's easy to say, and maybe there are people who can't be saved. I'm sure, there are. But so many, if you give them a chance to, you find out what happened to them, and they get a chance to mend what aches in them, they can move and mend the harm that they did in society, and we're the better for it. So I think we keep on, here's another idea, Mike, honestly, since you asked, I think that you should convene a restorative justice colloquium in Lake County and pull together, you've got Julio, Pastor Rick, in awe. I love what you're doing. You've Donna Barnett. Let's not leave out Erica, and really get the perspective of the community and educate everyone in Lake County. This is not soft on crime. This is us in the justice system doing a better job and really solving problems instead of just marking people as felons and throwing them away.
That's wonderful. Well, that's probably a great place to end, because, certainly we've got great programs here in Lake County that we're all proud of and that have been successful. And, I think Erica was also a great way to end this on a positive note, but we're certainly not going to rest on that. And we know that we can and should do better and do more. And that's what this is about, as much as celebrating the great things that are going on, but also recognizing how can we be better and continue to improve. So I want to thank you all for coming on and taking time out of your very busy schedules this evening to be here and be part of this. I really appreciate it. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mike.
all.
Take care. Thank you.
All right. God